For years, the quiet neighborhoods of the UK had been known for their well-tended gardens, often adorned with whimsical garden gnomes. From sleepy villages in Yorkshire to bustling suburbs of London, the colorful, quirky statues stood proudly in people's front yards, bringing a touch of cheer to the mundane. But recently, something very peculiar has been happening. Garden gnomes were disappearing, and not in ones or twos, entire collections were vanishing overnight. And those who had seen the strange lights in the sky had started whispering one wild theory. Aliens were behind it. It all began in the small village of Puddlecombe, where Mrs. Agnes Piercurtain was the first to notice her beloved collection of garden gnomes missing. She had 30 in total, each with a name and a place in her carefully curated garden. "I went to bed last night, and there they all were, smiling away," she told the local paper. "And this morning? Gone, every last one of them." The village scoffed at first, thinking perhaps it was a prank by local kids. But Agnes was not one to be easily fooled, and she swore up and down that something strange had happened. "I heard a buzzing noise around midnight, like a low hum," she said. "And I swear I saw a light flashing outside my window, but I was too scared to look." Days later, another report came from across the country in the seaside town of Bognor Regis. Mr. Charles Grosbat, a retired postman with a garden full of gnomes, reported a similar incident. "It was the middle of the night, and there was this bright light coming through the curtains," Charles said. "When I went outside to investigate, I saw a beam of light, no word of a lie, right there, hovering over my garden. And then, whoosh! Up went my gnomes, sucked up into the light like they weighed nothing at all. The next morning they were gone." By now, the reports had started to attract attention from tabloids across the country. Theories ranged from local teenagers pulling elaborate pranks to secret government experiments. But the sightings of the strange lights and the humming noises grew more frequent. People started to notice the same pattern: a UFO, always seen hovering above the garden, followed by a bright beam of light that illuminated the garden gnomes. The gnomes, as if possessed by some invisible force, would slowly rise into the air, their little ceramic faces locked in expressions of surprise and terror as they disappeared into the belly of the craft. One of the most dramatic sightings occurred in Birmingham, where an entire street had its gnomes stolen in a single night. "It was like a mass abduction," said Lucy Buns, one of the affected homeowners. "We all saw it. A massive flying saucer, not far above the rooftops. There was this eerie light coming down, and all our gnomes started rising up into the air. You could see the looks on their faces, like they knew something terrible was about to happen." Local authorities were at a loss. How could they explain these strange happenings without sounding ridiculous? A special task force was even set up, codenamed Operation Gnome Guard, to investigate the growing number of reports. But even the most skeptical members of the task force couldn't ignore the mounting evidence. There were surveillance videos, blurry though they were, showing a strange craft hovering over gardens and, sure enough, the gnomes being lifted into the air by some unseen force. The situation escalated when a group of amateur UFO hunters from Manchester, calling themselves the Skywatchers, captured what was to date the clearest footage of the phenomenon. Armed with night vision cameras and high-tech binoculars, they had set up camp in the hopes of catching a glimpse of the elusive craft, and that night they were not disappointed. "We saw it with our own eyes," said Dave Haggerty, the leader of the group. A massive saucer-shaped UFO, floating silently above this garden. There was this pale blue beam of light, and it came down right onto a line of gnomes. I swear the little guys looked terrified. They started to shake like they knew they were about to be taken. And then, one by one, they floated up into the light. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. The footage caused a sensation, appearing on news channels and sparking heated debates across the nation. Were aliens really stealing garden gnomes? And if so, why? Speculation ran rampant. Some suggested that the gnomes were being taken for study, possibly to understand the peculiar human tradition of placing such strange figures in their gardens. Others believed it was part of a more sinister plot, a prelude to a larger alien invasion where the gnomes were being used as reconnaissance tools. One theory, however, gained more traction than others. Dr. Penelope Fry, a leading ufologist, proposed that the aliens had mistaken the gnomes for some sort of earthling deity. In many cultures, she explained, small statues are often used to represent gods, spirits, or ancestors. It's possible that these extraterrestrial visitors believe the gnomes hold some significant power or knowledge. While Dr. Fry's theory was certainly intriguing, it did little to comfort those whose gnomes had been taken. Reports continued to pour in from all over the country, gnomes vanishing under mysterious circumstances, always accompanied by sightings of the strange UFO. In some cases, the abducted gnomes were never seen again. But in other instances, a few gnomes were found days or weeks later, placed in bizarre locations on rooftops, in the middle of fields, or even perched precariously on the edges of cliffs. One homeowner in Cornwall, whose gnome had been taken and later returned, found a small metallic object attached to its base. "I don't know what it is," she said, "but it looks like some kind of alien tracking device." Despite the growing evidence, the government remained tight-lipped, offering only vague assurances that they were looking into the matter. But the people knew better. Something strange was happening. And as long as the UFOs kept coming, the gnomes of Britain were not safe. To this day, the Great Gnome Heist remains one of the most mysterious and bizarre alien encounters in modern history. Whether it was a case of extraterrestrial research, a misunderstanding of Earth's cultural quirks, or simply a cosmic prank, one thing was clear: the gnomes of Britain would never be looked at the same way again.